quantitative survey research, which is the purpose of today's class. All right. Right. I have a process I have developed, and I have applied it practically to my honors students, masters, and PhD, and it has made wonders. Right. I developed this from my practical experience when I was doing my PhD, and I applied it when I was doing my research, and I found it making it easier for me to publish. I'll tell you, for example, last year I managed to publish about 25 research papers. Why? It was just applying this approach. So it makes research, quantitative research, exciting, interesting, so motivating to do. Right? I remember one lady, honor students, I taught her this approach, and she did her structural equation modeling. And she went home. The mother called me and said, "Is it true that my daughter did all this thing alone?" I said, "Yes, Mama." And I said, "Hey, how did you do it?" And I said, "No, I taught her, and she is just a wonderful lady." And she was so excited. And even when she graduated, she said, "I want to see that lecturer who taught you this thing." You know, you can see the excitement, right? And there are several examples I can give you, right? Another husband called me and said, "You know, Prof, I'm enjoying your class a lot." I said, "Your class? Who are you?" I said, "Oh, no, I am the director in this company." I said, "Oh, are you my students?" "No, I'm not your student. My wife is actually your student. So every time you teach her, she comes and teaches me at home. So I'm enjoying your classes at home." You see, so it's an approach I developed to make the difficult simple to understand, right? Okay, so where is the starting point? I think you've heard a lot of supervisors saying, "I want to do a research." They ask you, "What is your research topic or title?" Are we together? Then they can decide whether to take you aboard or reject you. But my practical experience tells me otherwise. A title or topic is not very important to think of from the onset. Are we together? Right. From my practical experience, it's not very important. Why? Because a title or topic can change at any time. I've done it with my publications. You write an article, you say, "This is good." You send it to the reviewer, they say, no, this title is not speaking to what you study. Change it to this. But because I want it published, what do? I change it, isn't it? The same applies. You write your thesis. I say, "No, this is, as your supervisor, no, this topic is very good. I like it." Then I pass it. I send it for an external examiner. External examiner says, "No, this topic is not speaking well to this study. Change the topic title to read this, or shorten it to this version, or summarize to this." So what do? Because you want to graduate, you change it. So the question is, why should you start by spending a lot of your time focusing on something that can change in time? You understand? This is what prompted me to develop this approach. I then realized that when you want to do a quantitative study without wasting your time, start by thinking of a research idea. Are we together? Just a research idea. Right. For example, I see every time when university is open, students are toiling, destroying things, burning things, and the university losing billions and millions of rands. Are we together? Then I say, why are students always violent at tertiary institution? We call it, then I say, no, this is now no longer a demonstration. It's violent behavior. That is when, instead of going and demonstrating to the VC or whoever the office, they start by burning the library, which houses the books that they want to read to get their qualification. Then you say, something is wrong here. This is no longer a demonstration, but what? Violent behavior. Are we together? Then it's a problem. I'm seeing emerging in society. And as somebody, a concerned citizen, then I say, no, hold a moment. Why are these students being violent? Then I now say, okay, what is the starting point? Here's the easiest way to do it. You have an idea, go and consult the literature immediately. Before you go, you waste your time wandering here and there, right? Go use search engines. Google Scholar, Science Direct, JSTOR, EBSCO, ProQuest. Name them. There are a lot of search engines, right? Which is not the purpose of today's class. You punch in violent behavior. When you punch in violent behavior, you get many research papers, maybe hundreds or if not thousands, of people who have researched on violent behavior. Some were investigating what are the causes of violent behavior, right? Which we are going to touch on that when we talk of the conceptual model. Some were investigating what are the consequences of violent behavior. Are we together? Those who were investigating on the causes might say, oh, it's drug abuse. The students are abusing drugs. Some will say, no, it's alcohol abuse. Are we together? Some might say, no, maybe this is a trauma manifesting itself as students grow, but it was child abuse initially. A lot of people arguing from different perspectives. Are we together? Then those who have been focusing on the consequences of violent behavior, they say, oh, violent behavior finally leads to armed robbery. These students, when they graduate with that violent tendencies, these are the high-level criminals you find in society. Someone's finding, isn't it? Someone says, oh, it leads to antisocial behavior, right, in society where people you find just wantonly destroying properties. Are we together? So now, as a researcher now, when you get all these articles, you take a position. Do you want to investigate the causes of violent behavior? If it is, then you want to investigate the causes that informs the structure of your what? Of your research model. Okay, let me quickly show the difference. Say, I want to investigate the causes of violent behavior. Here is my violent behavior. Then I want to find the causes. What are the predictors of violent behavior? They say drug abuse, right? Alcohol abuse. Somebody say child abuse, right? Right. This becomes hypothesis 1, hypothesis 2, hypothesis 3. As easy as that. My focus, my interest is to investigate the causes of violent behavior at institutions of higher learning in South Africa. Then after perusing the literature, I find a lot of variables, research variables. But for me, I think in South Africa, what is important is drug abuse, because I see in society a lot of reports indicate that there is this problem. Some are indicating there is a wanton abuse of alcohol. So in South Africa, this variable is of pertinent importance. Child abuse, yes, there is evidence that no. A lot of children, the statistics show that children are abused at a younger age, right? And that trauma can manifest itself when they grow older, and they can actually naturally become violent. That is in South Africa. Then I leave other variables that I think do not speak to what is happening in South Africa. Now when I do that, what I have done here is what is called conceptualizing a research model. Are we together? And when you have this model, then I say you are almost half done with your dissertation. Or if it's a proposal, you are almost half done. Why do I say so? A research model is like a skeleton of a human being. If a human being dies and I see a skeleton, maybe 10 years later, I see a skeleton, then I can say, no, a human being died here. Why? Why didn't I say a dog died here? Can somebody say something? Yes, I see a skeleton here and then I say, this should be a human being who died here. Why did I say a human being and not a dog should have died here? The structure, isn't it? Because the structure of a dog is different from the structure of what? A human being. Is that understood? And what I cannot tell is, was this human being beautiful or ugly? That's what I can tell. I cannot tell. Was he fat or thin? Are we together? So this is now our duty now as researchers. Now when you have a model, you have a skeleton of a human being. Your next duty is to add flesh onto that skeleton to make that a beautiful lady, a handsome man. Don't put too much fat because the person might not be handsome. Do not put too much fat. The lead might not be beautiful. It's all about research. You are trying now to add flesh and perfect, so that at the end of the day, when a reader reads and say, oh, this is a very good research. Right. Okay. Beside the point, when you have this, you have almost everything. Right? Your title can come from there. Are we together? Your objectives come from there. Hypothesis, research, empirical research questions. Even the literature review, you know what is you should include in your literature review. Your questionnaire design, you know what should come because you have a model. Are we together? Say I want to come up with a topic when I have a model like this. I can just say drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and child abuse as predictors of violent behavior in South Africa, right? Or the influence of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and child abuse on violent behavior, the case of South Africa. Two different topics, same model. Right? So the title becomes a matter of academic gymnastics. I want to make it more appealing and attractive to the reader, so you can coin it the way you want. Is it making sense? This is why I'm saying don't waste your time starting by a title. You can actually come up with a good title after you have the model. Are we together? And when you have a good title, say for example, I say the influence of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and child abuse on violent behavior in South Africa. Then I ask you, what is the purpose of your study? The purpose of my study is to investigate the influence of drug, alcohol, child abuse on violent behavior in South Africa. From the title, you can easily discern the purpose because you have a model. Is it making sense? This is why I say the art of developing or conceptualizing a model is very important when you are doing a quantitative study. Are we together? Some even don't know how many hypotheses should I test. When you have a model, hypothesis is about the linkages that you have in your model. In this case, how many linkages do I have? 3. So I'm going to test 3 hypotheses. Are we together? There is a positive relationship between drug abuse and violent behavior. Hypothesis 1. There is a positive relationship between alcohol abuse and violent behavior in South Africa. Hypothesis 2. There is a positive relationship between child abuse and violent behavior in South African tertiary institutions. Hypothesis 3. It's easy as that. Why is it easy? Because I have a model. Is it making sense? Right. Research questions, empirical research questions. Empirical research questions are simply converting your empirical objective to question form. How do you know that these are my empirical objectives? Right. Empirical objectives, you are simply restating the hypothesis in another form. As easy as that. Mind you, when you are stating an objective, it has to start with 2. Are you aware of that? Right. So in this case, empirical objective 1, to investigate the influence of drug abuse on violent behavior. That's empirical objective 1. Right? To investigate the influence of alcohol abuse on violent behavior. That's empirical objective 2. To investigate the influence of child abuse on violent behavior. That's empirical objective 3. Right? And what are the empirical research questions? Convert the empirical objective into question form. To what extent does drug abuse influence violent behavior in South Africa? Question, just changing empirical objective. Or does alcohol abuse influence violent behavior in South Africa? It's a question, isn't it? But the question, I'm converting the empirical objective. And why do we have empirical research questions? They keep us in check. By the time I get to the end of my study, I ask myself, have I answered these questions? If I've answered those questions, then I have achieved my empirical objective. That's what it means. If I have achieved my empirical objective, then I've tested my hypothesis. It's all linked. Is it making sense? And by achieving all these objectives, I've also attended to the purpose of the study. Because the purpose is drawn also from the model. Okay, no, this is now for quantitative study. Because for qualitative, as I said, we start with the data. Then when we get the data, we discern the data, then we analyze the data. When we analyze the data, then we develop a theory. But from a quantitative, we have to start from a theoretical perspective, right? I have an idea, develop a conceptual model. I ask myself, is this model making theoretical sense, right? Is it supported by any theory? Then I said, yes. Then I said, okay, let me now go and collect the data to confirm this causal relationship, whether this has a causal effect on this. And if so, is it significant, right? First, there are two issues when we are testing hypothesis. Is it positive or negative, right? Secondly, is it significant or insignificant? So for your case, you are not going to test any hypothesis when you are doing a qualitative study. Are we together? Right. So this is what makes the difference. The purpose, the research design, everything, as I stated briefly, it is different. Are we together? Are you answered, my sister? If you are not, ask more, and that's my job to explain it to the best of my ability. Right. The idea is, there are some studies that are good but cannot be done qualitatively. There are some studies that are good but cannot be done quantitatively. So it's now the duty of a researcher, the moment you start a research, ask yourself, does my research qualify to be quantitative or qualitative? But the easier way is go to research idea, consult literature. The literature you get can inform you that previous researchers have made it a quantitative, and this is how they've done it. Previous researchers argue that this has to be use a qualitative approach. And if it's qualitative, which research design they use, data collection method, data analysis method, you can get more insight. Right? That's why I developed this process. Get an idea, consult the literature, identify the variables like what I've done. After you identify the variables, then you conceptualize a research model, just as I have done. And mind you, I can actually even, this is what we call direct causal relationship. I'm going to show you some examples that I have in my slides, right? This is a direct causal relationship. But you can even make it an indirect causal relationship. Right? When it is like this, we call these predictors. Right. These ones are called what? Predictors, because they are predicting this outcome. So this we call it what? Outcome. This is our outcome variable. This is our predictor variable. Is it making sense? These are predictor variables. This is an outcome variable. But don't be confused by some books, because different books use different terminology, right? For example, these predictors, they are also called independent variables. Are we together? So when you see a book saying independent, it's as good as also a predictor variable. Are we together? In economics, they don't want to call it independent. They call it exogenous variable. Right? So you read exogenous. What now are they talking about? It's the same thing. Exogenous variable is the same as independent variable. It's the same as a predictor variable. Right? The outcome variable, in other books, they call it dependent variable. Are we together? So in economics, they call it endogenous variable. Right? It's just about the terminology, right? So don't be confused by that. Okay, so we can restate the same variables, right? These same four variables, I can conceptualize a model that is more advanced. When I want to think deeper, I can change this model and say, okay, is it true that all this automatically lead to this? And say, no, maybe something starts first before other things. Then I say, okay, maybe it's child abuse that starts. When this child is abused at a younger age, the child, as he grows to a student, he either abuses alcohol or abuses drugs. Abuses drugs in order to cope up with the trauma. Right? Isn't it making sense? Now when this student abuses drugs and alcohol, that's when he now adopt violent behavior at university. I'm thinking, that is what distinguishes a master's material from an honors material. A master's material from a PhD material. Thinking like this, right? I started simple, same variables. Now I want to think deeper, right? Then I say, okay, this should lead to that. This should lead to that. This should lead to that. And this should lead to that. Then in this case, I have H1, H2, H3, H4. This time I'm testing 4 hypotheses. Same variables, but now 4 hypotheses. In this case, we still have our predictor variable, right? We still have our outcome variable, right? But now we have something in between. What is this? We call this a mediator. This becomes a mediator variable. Because we are saying when there is child abuse, before this child ends up becoming violent at tertiary institution, something happens. The student might go for this route, abusing alcohol, or decide to abuse drugs, but finally he becomes or she becomes violent. Are we together? So still, you can come up with a topic, different topics based on that. Objectives also different. Restate your objectives, right? And on and on. Yes, my brother has a question there.
Thanks, Prof. I'm wanting to understand whether is it allowed that you test whether there is a relationship between 2 predictors?
Yes. The purpose of quantitative research is to test causal relationships.
Yes,
is this causing this to happen? Okay. Is lack of poor service delivery causing the community to demonstrate? Right? We want to see if there is a correlation. Right?
But my question, okay, if you use that,
yes,
which you have in your
yes,
flip chart,
yes,
you have DA causing VB,
yes,
and AA
causing also
causing
VB. Yes.
Can you then say DA is there a relationship between DA and AA?
If theoretically it makes sense, you can do that. For example, the one we are going to use, right? The one we are going to use in our practice, right? It's like this. Thanks for the question, eh? That's a good one. Right. Okay. We are saying here we have brand experience, right? Then we have brand satisfaction. We have brand trust. We have compulsive buying intention, right? There is a relationship. There is a relationship. There is a relationship. Right. But mind you, I said with the quantitative, we are starting from theory. Each relationship you hypothesize should make theoretical sense. Right. Here I am. I ask myself, can a person trust a certain brand, then be satisfied with it? Right. I'm reasoning. Or is it trust that starts before satisfaction? Or the person has to start by being satisfied. When he or she is satisfied, then he can trust or she can trust the brand. Which one makes sense? I trust this brand, so I'm satisfied with it. Or I'm satisfied with this brand, so now I trust it. Which one makes sense? Is it trust, satisfaction? Satisfaction, trust, isn't it? So that makes theoretical sense. So I can now say, okay, there is another route. Instead of going this route, we can go this route, then go here, right? Then go that side. So we have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5. You are now reasoning at a higher level of excellence. This is what distinguishes you. This is why you find some people write a thesis at master's, then the panel says, no, this is worth a PhD. The student should just improve on this area, and we grant him or a PhD. happens, right? So it's how you think and show that you can apply what you have learned in practical research. All right, let me not waste a lot of time because time will not be on our side. Then decide on your topic, purpose, empirical objectives, identify research questions, hypothesis, which is what we have done. Are we together? So let me quickly go through the slides with you, right? Okay, on this slide, I was trying to explain what I've actually told you, right? There is a direct causal relationship in quantitative study, and which is as good as, okay, all right, I'll show you, right, as we proceed, because I have actually done it. There is also a direct relationship would have predictors and outcomes only. Are we together? Right, whereas an indirect we have now predictors, mediators, and also outcome. Don't forget the different terminology used, right? Independent, dependent variables, exogenous, endogenous variables. Right. Right. A simple example of a direct causal relationship, right? Organizational politics influences employee turnover and tension, right? If there is a lot of politicking in your company, when it comes to promotion, people try to see who is connected to the boss, who has done a lot of favors to the boss, right? Said, of course, I've been here for 30 years and, I've been performing exceedingly well, but there's no way I can be promoted ahead of the boss blue-eyed boy, right? That's politics, isn't it? Right? Or maybe it's because the person belongs to subscribes to my religion, or maybe political affiliation, name it. That's all politics. Can that influence the desire of an employee to leave organization? That is turnover and tension. No, the heat is too much. I cannot stay. In politics they say, if the heat is too much for you in the kitchen, what do you do? Yes, get out. So turnover and tension. You leave. You say, no, I cannot take it anymore. I'm leaving. 2 research variables, 1 hypothesis. Simple research. I test this. Is it what is happening in companies? Right? Simple, direct relationship. Right? Again, direct causal relationships, the study we are going to do. In this case, I have many predictors and 1 outcome. You can even have many predictors and many outcomes. It's up to you. Are we together? The structure of your model is informed by what you want to find out. Are we together? So you need to know causal relationships you want to test. Then that informs the structure of the model.